A very common topic that I always have clients or anybody really ask me about is, what are legitimate and proper business expenses? So I just wanted to kind of go over the general idea of what a business expense could be, and then maybe dive into a small handful of common expenses that you might want to consider writing off when you're doing your taxes or speak with your accountant about. So generally speaking, a valid business expense is really any expense that you incur to sell your product or produce your income. I know that's a bit of a broad definition, but here we go. If you sell a product, when you buy the product, build the product, produce the product, all of the costs there, the materials, the machinery, any labor and employees you have would all be legitimate business expenses that you could use to reduce your income, to reduce your overall tax bill, which is our goal, really. Also, if you pay rent, utilities, a lot of times I personally work out of my home sometimes, so I'm able to expense a portion of my home expenses. Really, our cell phones. If you travel between clients, travel to the office is not generally deductible, but if you're traveling to the office and then going out to clients, certain commuting expenses or your standard mileage rate could be deductible. If you buy any new computers or any new office equipment, any employees, not just people producing your products, but your assistant, the people in your accounting department, the people running your store, any employees are really deductible, all of the expenses that you incur there. And of course your CPA fee and your attorney's fees, all of those are readily deductible. And when you're writing off expenses, and we'll get here in a little bit, you want to make sure that you can provide proof, reasonable proof that your expenses are legitimate. Bank statements, canceled checks, credit card statements, receipts. And all of this information should really be kept in your files. I generally say 7 years after the preparation of your tax return. This way, it gives a reasonable amount of time if the IRS ever wanted to come ask you about any of your income or expenses. And that leads me to a little bit of a separate topic, coming to IRS audits, which a lot of people, and I don't blame you really, are nervous if you hear from the IRS. Speaking of which, they will not call you demanding money. Those are bogus, phony people just trying to steal your money. But if you hear from the IRS via usually a notice, it could be nerve-wracking. But there's really a lot of different notices that you could receive. The simplest notices are, hey, we didn't receive your tax return, we didn't receive a payment from you, and that could be one of a couple things. You could have forgotten, in which case you should pay the tax due, but your CPA can try to assist you, if it's worth it, to reduce any penalties if it's the first time that you've forgotten. Or they could have just misplaced your information, in which case you can just provide proof that it was filed and paid, and that's simple. The more complex issues are when the IRS starts asking for proof of your expenses and your income, in which case you'd really want to obtain the guidance of an accountant or a tax attorney who can assist you in organizing your information, putting together proof of your expenses in a very organized and calm fashion. You have to remember that these IRS agents are just trying to do their job, so it's not really in your best interest to be combative with the agents. They'll be much more understanding if you come in calm and collected and work with them. And look, people try to push the envelope in hopes that they don't get caught. If you do, we deal with it in hopes that the IRS will be understanding, and maybe you'll just have to pay some tax and they'll help reduce any penalties that they assess on your account, which is the goal. Admitting mistakes is okay, and working with them, but always do that with the guidance of your accountant. Don't just offer up and pay the full bill, and that's not a wise way to do it either. Always use the guidance of your professional and come to a reasonable agreement with the IRS agents in hopes that we'll move forward in a reasonable manner.